Hello, greetings, friends. Crypto Thomas here. Thanks for joining me on my YouTube channel. It's been a crazy week already, a crazy Monday, a crazy couple weeks for global markets. And I wanted to give you guys a little free update today, astro and technical analysis, and just give you an overview of what we're looking at right now. We knew that this was a bad situation. We're kind of in an unprecedented situation, right now with the macroeconomic picture and, of course, the geopolitical problems with Russia and Ukraine. But the main problem right now is the Federal Reserve, right? About to do something that they're calling quantitative tightening. So we've seen this kind of market crash before. If you look at the fall of 2018 and also, of course, the pandemic panic sell-off of March 2020. But in those cases, the Fed came to the rescue, slashing rates and delaying their tapering off their balance sheet. This time, not only is the Fed not coming to the rescue, the Fed is the problem because they just raised interest rates again, and they also announced that they are going to be reducing their balance sheet. So letting those treasury bills and all sorts of mortgage-backed securities and corporate debt that they've been buying up, that's going to be going into settlement, and they're not going to be adding any new assets, right? So that essentially that's taking liquidity out of the markets, and that's what's going on. That's why, and they're doing that, of course, to fight this inflation, right, which is at a 40-year high. So that's also, of course, part of the bigger picture, right? We didn't have that, obviously, in the last couple of times around either. So that's why this time is different. And that's why right now what we're seeing is essentially buy the dip mentality of the last 4 years, really of the last 12 years, looks like it's coming to an end. The Fed has been playing a game of monetary musical chairs, basically what's been happening. And it's very much starting to look like the music is coming to a stop. So that's kind of the big picture overview of where we are right now, why the markets are tanking, right? The markets, the markets are really based, more than many people realize, not so much on the broader economy, but on what the Fed is doing and what the Fed is not doing. So if you really want to understand the bigger picture of markets, you have to understand what's going on with Federal Reserve policy, the biggest central bank in the world. So that's the kind of the backdrop that things are going on. Let's talk about the astrological picture. We've got a couple of really big astrological factors this week that we've been talking about on Twitter, on my Patreon, and also, in my newsletter updates and so forth. So I want to go over that and talk to you guys about that. I'm just going to put on my screen share here for a second. And first of all, I want to take you just to my website real quick here, the Astro Crypto Report. Guys, I have a ton of different subscription services on my Patreon, and we also have Patreon is probably where we put out the best content. And that is, you can jump on that for right here. Yeah, the $25 level gets you pretty much all access to my content. So I'd really recommend that. I also do private consultations. We've got astrological educational packages on my website as well. I've got private tutorials and private financial astrology consults. So I just want to throw that out there for you at astrocryptoreport.com. So all of this stuff was covered on my Patreon for my Patreons over the last couple of weeks, but we got two big shifts that are coming tomorrow. One of them is that Jupiter's going into Aries, and Jupiter changes signs. Well, the last time Jupiter changed signs was December 28th. It went into Pisces, and that's kind of essentially when a lot of this market may have started, but there were other factors there as well. The final exact Uranus-Saturn square was also in late December, and Venus also went retrograde conjunct Pluto in late December. So this combination of those three elements was actually a market killer. It's pretty clear now. So now Jupiter is going to be changing signs again into the sign of Aries. It hasn't been in Aries since 2011. And Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. Pisces, Jupiter is at 29 degrees Pisces right now. That's the last very end of the zodiac. So not only is Jupiter changing signs, it's changing signs into a new 12-year cycle, a new fresh start, a big new beginning. And Aries is a sign of courage, bold, fresh starts, and bold, decisive action. So this is a pretty big change. This is probably one of the biggest changes in the zodiac from Pisces to Aries. So this is a big shift. However, and this is also, we also covered this in my Patreon reports and a little bit on Twitter. This is also a sign this is a sign placement of Jupiter in Aries that's associated with personal freedom. And so I do think the pandemic restrictions are going to be, we're not going to be seeing a lot of new pandemic restrictions. And I'm interested to see what happens in some of the COVID lockdowns in China, because Jupiter in Aries is a very strong placement for personal freedom. And I think we're going to see rebellions against any kind of major new restrictions that come into play. Aries, of course, is the god of war, synonymous with Mars. And Jupiter in Aries Jupiter can expand, but Jupiter can also cause trouble too, even though it's a luck planet. And Jupiter in Aries, we could see an expansion in the war in the Russia and Ukraine. Now for markets, I did quite a bit of research on the previous cycles of Jupiter in Aries, and I want to share some of that with you. This is the kind of thing that my subscribers have been getting on Patreon. And I'm going to show you this Jupiter in Aries section that we did with a lot of historical research here, going all the way back to 1975. Now, the good news here is that Jupiter moving into Aries historically for the last 4 cycles, going back about 50 years, has been bullish. Jupiter is a confidence planet and Aries is a confidence sign. Okay, so this could be indicating a shift that we maybe are getting close to some type of a bottom here. Now, the thing is there's other cofactors, which I'm going to get to, which aren't bullish yet, especially Mars. So I don't know if we see that bullish shift take place right on the Jupiter ingress here, which is tomorrow, May 10th. It may take a while to unfold, but Jupiter is direct in Aries, May 10th through July 28th. So that's the period. Then it turns retrograde, which is a whole other story. We'll get to that later. But Jupiter direct in Aries has historically overall as a period been bullish. However, within that, there can be quite a bit of volatility. So if we look at the last 2 cycles here in 2021, actually Jupiter in Aries was quite bullish going into, Jupiter in Pisces in that case was quite bullish going into Aries. But Aries, we saw Jupiter in Aries still made 2 new all-time highs in the S&P 500. This is the S&P 500 chart. So while it wasn't a dramatic rally, we did see 2 new all-time highs during that period. Then towards the end of Jupiter in Aries, we did see a pretty sharp 6-week sell-off there. Now, if we go back to the previous cycle of 1999, February through June 1999, Jupiter in Aries was also bullish for the S&P 500. Now, we're also going to have Mars in Aries May 24th through July 5th, concurrent with Jupiter in Aries. And we can see that that was also, that was initially bullish for the first 2 weeks. And we did see a new all-time high, but then we did see a 4-week sell-off that continued. So that data is a bit mixed. Now, 1975, the S&P 500 also had Jupiter and Mars in Aries. That was the last time that we had, previous to 2011, the last time we had Jupiter and Mars together in Aries was 1975, and that was very bullish. We saw an 11-week rally. Now, interestingly, that had a sharp sell-off as soon as Mars left Aries, and this time around, that would be July 5th, so that's something that we might want to look at. Now, the previous cycle for Jupiter in Aries was quite bullish here. For Bitcoin, we only have 1 previous cycle for Jupiter in Aries for Bitcoin. And although that did have a long bull flag, mostly we saw actually quite a parabolic move there. So Jupiter in Aries here has also been quite favorable over the last 70 years, it's about the fourth best placement. Now, if we go back to 1987, we have something that's very interesting because Jupiter entered Aries. We got a few weeks of rally followed by a few weeks down, so a bit of chop there. And then we saw a very strong rally on Jupiter in Aries for something like 12 to 15 weeks, up until the week that Jupiter went retrograde. Then we saw several weeks of selling, followed by a lower high, and then one of the biggest drop-offs in stock market history, and that was the infamous Black Friday crash of October 1987. So that puts Jupiter retrograde in Aries on our red flag list as something that could also be quite unfavorable. And the date for that, as I mentioned earlier, is July 28th. So the bottom line here for Jupiter in Aries is that it generally tends to be bullish. It leans bullish. However, as we've seen, there's quite a few caveats there. There can be some choppy periods. And Jupiter retrograde specifically in 1987 was quite unfavorable for markets there. So yeah, Jupiter in Aries, like I said, it calls for kind of a bold, fresh new start and a big decisive change, launching a big new project or making big, decisive, courageous changes in our lives. So keep that in mind. However, tomorrow is actually, in the next couple of weeks, is some of the most paradoxical astrology of all of 2022, because not only does Jupiter enter Aries tomorrow, but also Mercury goes retrograde, okay? And as I said, Jupiter going into Aries is kind of a bold, dynamic, fresh new start. And Mercury turning retrograde at the same time is like, we got some unfinished business to attend to. We have to go back over things and take care of this unfinished business before we can make that fresh new start. And that's going to take about 2 to 3 weeks with Mercury retrograde there. So a very paradoxical, contradictory combination of elements. Good luck, navigating that. I think it's going to be quite tricky over the next couple of weeks, just personally and collectively for the planet, with that mixed picture. Now, Mercury retrograde can sometimes also bring, in a downtrend, in a market downtrend, Mercury retrograde can actually sometimes indicate a bullish pivot to the upside. So that's a possibility. However, the problem is that we have this eclipse, okay, that's coming this Saturday, this Sunday, May 15th. And this is quite worrisome. Also, Mars is still in Pisces and heading towards a conjunction with Neptune, okay, which is also quite weak until the 17th, May 17th. So my overall view is still continues to be quite unfavorable. We could see more sell-off. We could definitely see more sell-off in markets this week. This is the chart for the eclipse that's based on the West Coast, and it's going to be at 25 degrees Scorpio. This is a very interesting eclipse because it has an unusual combination of unfavorable elements, difficult, challenging elements, okay? It's got a total of 4 unfavorable elements. The moon itself is debilitated in the sign of Scorpio. It's the sign of fall. So the moon is just generally weakened in Scorpio every month for 2.5 days as it passes through Scorpio. It's said to be one of the 3 most unfavorable signs for the moon. On top of that, it's conjunct the South Node, which it will be every month as well. So this is just an unfavorable period generally. However, the fact that it's an eclipse kind of makes all of these factors, intensifies the unfavorable and really imprints them on the entire month or several weeks. So you've got what would ordinarily be a bright moon, which would be favorable, which at least would have some favorable energy, is darkened by the eclipse, debilitated in the sign placement of Scorpio, afflicted by the South Node. It's also in an afflicted square to Saturn. This also indicates loss. The South Node indicates loss, and Scorpio indicates loss. Some of you may know that Taurus, the opposite sign, is a wealth sign, a sign of gains, okay? Scorpio is a sign of transformation and regeneration, but it's also a sign of letting go and loss. The affliction to the south node also indicates loss, and the square to Saturn also indicates loss. Okay, so this is a lot of indications for continued losses here that are very concerning. The ruler of the eclipse is Mars, okay, ruling the sign of Scorpio, Mars's feminine sign. Mars itself is in an afflicted conjunction to Neptune, very incompatible energies. Neptune is an energy dissipation, and Mars, is a strong ego energy of confidence and moving forward boldly and strongly. And Neptune really douses that fire, douses that confidence of Mars, and it's a very martyred, it's a symbolism of martyrdom, okay? So this is not good. Now, the eclipse itself, the one silver lining is that it's actually trine the Mars-Neptune conjunction. So it's trine its own ruler, which is typically would be somewhat favorable. And it does indicate that there could be some kind of access to some type of divine blessings here. However, I do think that it indicates that there huge sacrifices will still have to be made. So this is setting up the stage here, and then Mars will make that conjunction to Neptune on the 17th. Also this week between the 10th and the 13th, Mars is going to conjunct the Bitcoin natal Uranus and oppose the Bitcoin natal Mars, okay? Also a quite unfavorable predicament by transit to the Bitcoin natal chart, okay? We can throw that up real quick here and just take a quick look at the Bitcoin transits here that I'm talking about. So here we see the Bitcoin natal chart, and tomorrow Mars is going to conjunct the Bitcoin Uranus, okay? That's a dangerous aspect of a sudden violent breakdown. Well, that's worrisome. I mean, we just had that already today. So the question is, did that already hit a day early? We already saw a really violent, dramatic breakdown in Bitcoin, moving down almost $10,000 within the last couple of days. So are we going to continue to see that? It's already threatening to break below 30,000. And at least on my daily chart here, I think really 30,000 obviously is a key psychological level. The next really critical level on the daily chart here is this 29.7 level, which was the July 21st, 2021 market low, okay? And we're going back to test that low. So this is pretty much the lowest price we've seen since then. So this is a very ugly, broken chart now. It doesn't look like we're going to see, any kind of buyer stepping in here. I think the best case scenario is that this level holds, and we see a sideways consolidation here around 30,000. But with with Mars conjunct the Bitcoin Uranus tomorrow, and then on Friday the 13th, okay, opposing the Bitcoin natal Saturn here, and then the eclipse on Sunday. Certainly, I have no confidence that the support level could hold up. And then so we would have to look at much lower support levels like 25,000 or the 200 week moving average, which is around 21,000, or even the worst case scenario of the 2017 all-time high, which has never been tested as a support, could get tested here. So certainly if stocks continue lower, and if DXY, the US dollar currency average, which is right now at a 6-year high, if that breaks out, okay, that would spell a doom for risk on markets. And it's kind of stuck here at $1.03. But if this is the DXY US dollar chart, if it starts to go a little bit higher, then we're looking at highs that haven't been made since December 2002. So that would be, we're starting to look at 20-year highs in the US dollar. And that's basically a fear gauge. So global financial markets are flooding into US dollar holdings as a safe haven. So the situation is pretty grim. And as I said at the beginning of this talk, typically in the past, we've seen the Fed kind of come to the rescue when markets started to tank, but that doesn't seem to be the case now. And this isn't just crypto markets. As I posted on Twitter earlier today, I mean, you've got other, problems like Netflix here. This is the Netflix weekly chart. Actually, I got this a little bit wrong when I posted this on Twitter. So let's fix this here. But this is the March 2020, okay, low of the pandemic crash. And we've now broken through the March 2020 panic sell-off low there. We've also broken through the September 2019 low and even the December 18 low for Netflix. It's significantly below that. So this is one of the biggest wipeouts in market history. You'd have to go all the way back to like the 2008 crash or the dot-com crash of 2000 to start seeing charts that look like this. So this is really an epic historical market route that we're seeing here. So guys, I hope that's some helpful information for you. Now, when does this stuff turn around? Okay, certainly I don't think we see it turn around before May 17th, right? That's when Mars conjuncts Neptune. Now, the two dates I'm looking at right now for a possible turnaround is going to be Mars going into Aries, which is could bring back confidence to markets, and that's May 24th. So put that on your calendar. And then Venus money planet Venus goes into the wealth sign of Taurus on May 28th, and that could also be a very favorable. So I like that combo overlapping of Mars and its rulership dignity with confidence in Aries, and Venus with rulership dignity in the wealth sign of Taurus. Okay, so that's May 24th through May 28th. So we've got a couple of weeks to get through. We've got eclipses and other negative aspects. Okay, but they're probably going to be, at this point, markets are starting to get deeply into oversold territory. And so there's probably going to be some short-term buys there. Now, is that going to be the end of this situation or just a relief rally? We've got a lot of poor signals coming through in July that I'm very worried about, including the second USA Pluto return. So we got a lot of heavy stuff that's coming down. We've also got Pluto's going to conjunct the Bitcoin Progress Sun for the 4th time in July, also quite negative. So I think we're at best looking for a couple of months of rebound rally, possibly. But even there's some unfavorables that are worrisome. But we'll get into that picture a little bit later down the road. I hope this has been interesting and informative video. Thanks for joining my YouTube. Please consider signing up for my Patreon weekly and monthly subscription reports to get much more detailed, in-depth analysis and research, financial astrology research. And that's astrocryptoreport.com. Follow me on Twitter at astrocryptoguru. Thanks for joining us today on YouTube. And hang in there, guys. Batten down the hatches. We may have a couple more difficult weeks ahead of us, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel at the end of the month. Thank you.